It is now time to experience the buzz, a podcast that takes an inside look at amazing people doing amazing things. Get ready for some great conversation that will be fascinating, educational, and inspiring. We will also leave room to help small businesses in a big way. Now, here's your host, entrepreneur Steve Buzzard.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into another episode of Experience the Buzz. It's number 105. That's right, episode 105, and today we are talking CIM, California International Marathon. We have got the executive director, and his name is Scott Abbott. Okay, think about this. You are in charge of running the largest marathon in California, third largest in the country, and a very, very popular site for elite runners and anybody going to like training for Olympic trials, trying to qualify for the Boston. Like, this is the place to be. And so on Sunday, December 4th, it will be the 39th running of the CIM, and we're going to have Scott Abbott break it down. In addition to breaking down the CIM, which I know is going to be a lot of fun, even if you're not a marathon runner, I think you will enjoy the knowledge. We're going to talk about the Sacramento Running Association, in which Scott has been the executive director there for almost 10 years, and then we get down to the personal story. How did this guy get to where he is? It's pretty amazing how he got into running. He's got an amazing family, and we're going to break it all down today on ETB. But as we always do, let's get into What's the Buzz? And today the buzz is this. We have 4 sponsors. They're amazing. R5 Stitch and Print, along with Pit Boss Jerky, Little Whale Swim School, and Matt the Mortgage Guy. Those 4, they have been with us the whole distance. The original 2 are Pit Boss Jerky and R5 Stitch and Print, and then jumping on board was Little Whale and Matt the Mortgage Guy. Here's the deal. We've got room for more. So if you are a small business out there and you would like to kind of get the word out about what it is that you do, this is the perfect place on this podcast, because not in addition to the people that you will reach, everything's customizable. So if whatever you want to say, we'll get that message out there for you. We've done it with the 4. It has been great. If you want to run specials, whatever it is, we are here to deliver. And I say we, it's me. Okay. So I'm here to deliver for you. So if you would like to be a sponsor and jump on board just in time for the new year to get here, 2023, you can go to buzzardball.com, and then you will see the button that will take you to the sponsorship page. There's all outlined there, but I emphasize to you, customizable, right? You find the one that fits, and then we talk, and then we'll make it work. Like, I've got all my notes for my sponsors here, and then I will always contact them every couple of weeks and say, hey, what's new? What do you want me to get out there to the people? So I'll just give you one example. Pit Boss Jerky. He just found out that his beef jerky is now available in Knee Deep Brewery in Auburn. He's sent that to me. So boom, we get that in. Okay. So stuff like that is what we will do for you. And that is What's the Buzz. All right. So today it is Scott Abbott of the CIM, Executive Director, Sacramento Running Association. Going to be a great conversation today. And of course, this one is airing on the weekend of. Okay, so we couldn't have timed it any better. Can't wait. Enjoy the conversation. Hello, everyone, and welcome in. It's Experience the Buzz. It's episode number 105. Scott Abbott is with us, everybody. And he's got the task of running the California International Marathon. I mean, just wrap your head around that. Pretty good stuff. Scott, welcome to the program.
Thanks. And let's be clear, I'm not running the California International Marathon. I'm operating the California.
Yes, the play on words, right? When I say run.
So that so many others can run it, yeah.
Yes, so from the admin side. So we'll set it up for you. I mean, Scott is the executive director of the Sacramento Running Association, in which he has done that for nearly about 10 years now, and now helps run the operation of the California International Marathon. Now, I will throw in there that Scott is a runner, okay? And he is a well-decorated runner, and we're going to get into that a little bit later. But I thought with kicking this off, this is the perfect time. This is going to run on the Friday before the big run on Sunday. When it comes down to the first Sunday of December, everybody knows the CIM. And the cool thing is you're a big part of it. So that's got to be pretty cool, and I know you love running this thing.
Yeah, it is. It's an important civic event here in Sacramento, and and I love it. It's at the confluence of so many things in my life, and I just even remember as a kid growing up here in Sacramento, having it go right down Fair Oaks Boulevard, out from the house, from my house, and being able to go out and watch the, people run, and before I even got into the sport myself, so that this kind of has been able to come back full circle, and then I'm that person clogging up the streets now on that first weekend in December, but also bringing this important civic amenity to Sacramento and keeping it going for our city.
It keeps getting bigger and bigger, okay? Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk about what was learned. I always ask, like, entrepreneurs like yourself and things like, what did we learn from COVID? Because there were a lot of takeaways. But, I mean, you're going to have the largest registration that you've ever had. So explain that, because COVID was a big piece. You guys made a very important decision that allowed people to say, hey, you could come back the next year or the year after. And it seems like that decision alone really worked well for you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously COVID, dealt everybody, a wrench, and everyone, kind of had to make some decisions. A lot of them had to be just quick, and they couldn't even be really data driven. You just kind of had to go with, hey, what could work for us, and we're trying to project way down range how things might look, and we were in the thick of things in 2020, registering people for the 2020 CIM. We usually, our heaviest registrations in the springtime. That's when people are signing up, and we usually sell out by summer. So we were right in the thick of, and there was so much uncertainty about whether, you guys remember those first days of COVID. It was nuts. We didn't know what the next day was going to bring, let alone what 6-8 months was going to bring. And so we really just kind of huddled up and made a decision at that time that was kind of just a swing. But it ended up being a really good decision. We created something called worry-free registration at that time, where we allowed people to register for CIM with all the uncertainty. They could register worry-free, and what it gave them was, if the race couldn't happen, it gave them basically a deferred entry into any of the next 3 CIMs, so 2021, 2022, 2023. So that really covered all the uncertainty. Even the what if 2021 doesn't happen? It was like, well, this gets you into 22 and 23. And so, we kind of covered that, and it ended up being great. Everyone was able to register as they normally would. And then we've been able to kind of really space people out over the next couple of years as people have kind of tapped back in. A lot of people last year didn't want to tap back in. There was still a lot of uncertainty. COVID was still a major issue this time last year. It allowed people to tap back in at their own pace, but at the same time gave us room to sell back in new people that wanted to run, and now it's sort of gotten to that point where we're bringing all those people back that missed in 2020. We've got a bunch of new people in. The world's changed so much in the last 2 years. A bunch of people have taken up running in the pandemic. That was something that, people. Steve, you were one of them. You were actually one of the most inspirational people that really took up running and as something to do, and then said, hey, I'd love to run a marathon now, and so we've been able to kind of merge those two, and now here we are back. I don't want to say COVID's behind us, but we're definitely in a spot where we can do in-person events again, and we're gonna, we're on track to put on maybe the biggest one we've ever had here in this community after 39 years putting on the event.
Yeah, and here's what's cool too is last year was a big moment because Sarah Vaughn broke the women's record. I mean, that was absolutely huge.
Yeah, it was cool, and that's the cool thing about the event. It's a great community event. It brings people from all over the world to Sacramento to run, but it's also great for our local runners. A lot of people that that aren't actually runners and just are trying to do this to check off something on their bucket list, or just trying to change their health and fitness goals, and using it as a platform. But at the front of the race, it's also a championship running event. It's a world-class running event. We bring some of the best marathoners in the world here to Sacramento every year. This year, it's the United States Marathon Championship. So some of the top American marathoners are going to be running for a chance to win a national title and qualify for the Olympic trials. And last year, Sarah Vaughn, she's one of the top American distance runners, but she had never run a marathon before,
crazy,
as you'll remember. And she came and debuted here at CIM and broke our course records. She was an unsponsored runner. And after that, broke our course record. She ended up getting a Puma sponsorship, and now she's a professional distance runner full time. In addition to being a mother of 4, so I mean, it was a really, really cool story. And that's just every single year. It seems like we've got great stories all the way at the very front of our race, but then cool stories all the way throughout, and even at the very back end. You have people that this is a huge life goal of theirs to run 26.2 miles. And it's fun to be there. I know you're at that finish line all the way up to the end, and you see all those inspirational moments from tail to snout.
Well, and Scott, what I've loved that you guys have done is that it's not just about race day. It truly is the experience, which starts on that Friday with the expo. The expo in itself, I think, is just like kind of one of these unique experiences. And I think the big takeaway for me is, being there all day and on Friday and Saturday is when you have those panels and you have people like yourself and, the other runners that talk about running the CIM. Like, I can't figure out a better way to get a roadmap of how to do it. And so maybe you could talk about that, of what went into saying, okay, knowing that expo was part of this experience, that you guys wanted to make it a 3-day thing and not just race day.
Yeah, and really that's the growth of our industry as a whole. Like, before, when things, 20, 30, even 40 plus years ago, there used to be just draw chalk on the ground somewhere and then you go race to the next line on the ground at the finish line, and they were just people getting together and going for races. And slowly over time, corporate entities have gotten involved, and this has now turned into big business, and the production has gotten turned way up. But part of it is we're recognizing that these are big moments in people's lives, and these are big events. Running a marathon isn't just something you show up and do. It's something that is life-consuming for a lot of people. They're from the day they register to all the weeks of training and preparation they put in, to everything leading up to the race, and then the race itself, and then even the celebration after the race. It's this kind of, cruise ship that never docks for people. It's just they're constantly, on this, kind of marathon cruise ship, so to speak. So we've tried to build in as much production as we can around the event to really help, provide, the best experience possible for participants, but also, as you said, try to provide resources so people can be successful and get more out of the experience. And we bring a lot of partners and sponsors in at that expo for people to interact with and really kind of enhance that experience. It's a great just place for a marketplace where people can kind of buy gear and do different things and see different trends in the running industry, learn about other races that are out there. But then also we put on those panels, and you're right, we have a lot of great expert panels. We bring in elite runners to talk to people, and they can learn a lot of stuff about how to run the race well, but also just other topics. And really, we just tried to build that production. We've added other events, the youth event, the Mara Fun Run that happens on Saturday. We had the Capital 5K that we used to put on Saturday too. So that people that are coming to Sacramento, that are here for 2 or 3 days, they've got a lot of programming to really make it a special weekend, a special experience. And really, truly a destination marathon. And that's really what separates the marathon from maybe other running events where, hey, Run to Feed the Hungry this week, is a great local community event. But, you can roll out of bed that morning and just go, kind of hack your way through a 5K or a 10K. And that's a fun event, be around a lot of people. But it's not the same life-consuming event that you see with the marathon that really kind of consumes people's lives. And if you've ever had someone in your life that's running a marathon, a coworker, they probably talk your ear off about it all the way leading up. Well, I got my long run in this weekend and this and that. And by the time the marathon happens, you're just sick of hearing about it probably. Well, that just shows how important it is in a lot of these people's lives. And we just try to provide as much programming as we can to really help them celebrate that and really get the most out of it.
Let's do a reset for you. Scott Abbott, Executive Director of the California International Marathon and the Sacramento Running Association. When we talk about the CIM, again, celebrating its 39th year, a lot of history since 1983. We had mentioned Sarah Vaughn with the record last year, and I had forgotten about that portion, about that being her first go, mother of 4, and that's where I got the goosebumps because, yeah, that moment was incredible. On the men's side, it's pretty amazing. Jerry Lawson still holding the record at 2:10:27 since 1993. There's so many cool facts about this. Fastest course in the West, #1 Boston qualifier. You mentioned the U.S. Olympic trials. The above sea level is pretty amazing. 366 to 26, downhill to downtown, all these great words. And so this is going to be my favorite part, at least of this portion, is you breaking it down, like breaking down that course for us, because I think that'd be a lot of fun for people, whether you're running it or not running it.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes CIM special and how it's really grown to become one of the largest marathons in the United States. Sacramento is about the 27th or 28th largest market in the United States, but CIM's, I think, the 7th or 8th largest marathon in the United States. I think last year it was actually the 5th largest marathon behind New York, Boston, Chicago, Los Angeles. I think I'm forgetting someone in there, but major cities, and then here's Sacramento with the next one, and part of that is, I think that we're very fortunate here in Sacramento that we've got a topography that really topography and weather that lends itself to great performance running. We can run 26 miles point to point from Folsom to Sacramento with very little hills, and if anything, that's a net downhill. You mentioned the 360 feet down to, whatever the capital is, 30 or 40 feet above sea level. So over the course of 26 miles, it actually nets downhill. It's not necessarily a downhill race. That's a very slight downhill over 26 miles. But what it shows is that, we have 26 miles of land that's relatively flat. There are very few other places, major urban places, where you can find that. So we're fortunate there here in Sacramento. We're also fortunate that we can put on a race in early December, where we are going to get ideal running temperatures. It may not be a great temperature to be out, walking around or mowing the lawn or doing things on that morning. But for running, it's ideal. It's never going to be higher than about 60 degrees at the very hot warmest, and it's never really going to be colder than about mid 30s at the lowest. And so you're going to be in a sweet spot of probably about 40 to 50 degrees, which is ideal temperature for running. So that's why runners from all over the world have flocked to Sacramento in December, because they know it's a great opportunity to have your very, very best performance. So we've really become this really major performance running event. We're the number one Boston qualifier, as you mentioned, in the world. No other race qualifies more runners to the Boston Marathon than our race, including Boston itself last year. We qualified more runners to Boston than Boston did to its own race. Wow. So that tells you a little bit about the performance capabilities of our event. And also, we were the number one Olympic trials qualifying race in the last quadrennium to the Olympic trials of any race in the world. In fact, if you combined all the other major marathons, their Olympic trials qualifiers, all of them combined didn't equal what CIM did by itself in the quadrennium of 2018 to 2016 to 2020, that quadrennium. So the professional runners have recognized, hey, if you want to run fast, CIM's the place to do it. And then we've really embraced that and tried to put on an event that really lends itself to performance running. And so that's a neat thing for us, that it's, like I said, it's not just a community event. It's not just a run, for, kind of weekend warriors. It's also this professional running event and a performance event that really puts Sacramento on the map and on the national running landscape.
And Scott, if you could you share like kind of the iconic spots kind of a lot along the way, like, getting out to mile, whatever it might be, this happens and everything. That's the fun part too that I enjoy.
Yeah, it's unique. Having a point-to-point course, it obviously poses challenges operationally. We've got to get 10,000 people out to the start line in Folsom, a lot of busing that's used to do that. And also just closing 26 miles of roads. A lot of races we'll use a loop course or an out and back, but we actually do point-to-point 26 miles. But what's really fun about that is it literally and figuratively ties our community together. Sacramento is an amalgam of neighborhoods, more than anything. I mean, yes, we have those hallmark, downtown, the Capitol, Golden One Center, but really Sacramento is this, kind of calico patchwork of neighborhoods. And this race really showcases that, starting out in Folsom and literally kind of winding its way down to the Capitol through, starting in Folsom, going through Orangevale, Citrus Heights, Fair Oaks, Carmichael, Arden Arcade, by Arden Park, Campus Commons and Sierra Oaks, across the J Street Bridge into East Sac and through the Fab 40s and through Midtown and then into downtown. It all along the way, people for years, it's a course that's been unchanged for almost 40 years. So people that live along the course, they know every year in that first weekend in December they can come out on that street corner and cheer. Some of them have done it for every single year. And that really brings in, it's great because it really kind of connects all these communities together from Folsom to the Capitol. So that's really one of the unique things about the event that I think makes it special. In terms of some of those iconic spots, the start line in Folsom, and Steve, you're one of the people who really gets a chance to enjoy that and maybe gets the best view of it of anybody, being able to stand up there as the sun's rising over the Folsom Dam and Folsom Lake and getting to see 10,000 people all lined up together that all have that same challenge ahead of them. No matter if they're, a professional runner at the front or someone who's just trying to finish at the back, they're all on that same starting line together, and they've all faced with the same challenge, which is covering 26 miles from Folsom to the Capitol. That's really an iconic spot going through Folsom. Another great spot is in historic Fair Oaks at mile 10. That's a really neat spot. That really, the town of Fair Oaks really gets behind that. They've got great bands out there, and they're really pumping the runners up as they go through historic Folsom. Another great spot is as you pass through the Arden Arcade area. There's some great tree canopies, and those neighborhoods really come out and support the race all the way up to Loman's Plaza. Loman's Plaza is always a huge spot for spectators. And then going over the J Street Bridge is always an iconic moment for every marathoner or every CIMer, mainly because that I mentioned the race is so flat and you've been rolling along, and then you get to that bridge and you got to climb a little to get up that bridge, and it's a shock to the system. But there's always a great cheer zones all along that bridge. You're going by the entrance to Sac State. The Sac State cheerleaders are out there cheering everybody on, and then you roll into East Sac, Midtown, and downtown. You hit the numbered streets. Everybody starts counting down. You hit 57th Street. You got about 50 blocks to go to the Capitol, and you just start your countdown going through those great neighborhoods. And at that time, it's brunch crowd is out there. They're cheering the runners on, bringing everybody home, and it's a party down there in East Sac and Midtown as they bring the runners, give them a hero's welcome as they approach the Capitol. And then one of the most iconic moments of the race is making that left turn off of L Street onto 8th Street, and then another left onto Capitol Mall, and boom, you got the Capitol as a spectacular backdrop to our finish area. And then you got Steve Buzzard announcing your name, and there's very few feelings that are as good as that, to see the Capitol there and that finish line and having you call their name, and it really makes for such a special moment for a lot of people.
And that finish too, it's very unique, right? Amongst marathon, it's not one finish. We've got two finish lines. Maybe explain how that came about.
Yeah, it came about because our Capitol Mall is divided. It's got a center median, grass median across the middle, which kind of really limits our ability to use the entire road. So we created two finish lines. We were one of the first races in the country to have separate finish lines for men and women, and that allowed women for the first time at our race. Was one of the first races ever where they got to cross a tape first, where they weren't coming in behind or with men as they were winning the marathon. So our women's winner was the first to cross the tape, which was a kind of cool thing for CIM to have, and it was just by virtue of that we had to have two sides of the road. And so that's how we split it up. That's changed over the years. Now we have a championship finish line where, our top men finish on that side, and then the top women finish behind them, and then we divert the men to the other side. And then after that, we just kind of split people evenly to either side. But yeah, there are separate finish lines, which is kind of cool because it gives it a little more intimate feel as you're crossing the road. The fans are right there on both sides of the road cheering everybody on. You can get some great pictures of friends or family members that are running in those shots right there at the finish line, and then there's a great party happening on Capitol grounds, beer garden and food and a bunch of vendors and great photo opportunities, and so a really great special way to celebrate an amazing achievement, no matter what that achievement is, whether you're running your first or your fastest marathon. CIM is a great platform for achievement.
A couple of nuggets of information that I think would be good to share. Number one, let's talk porta potties, right? Because I didn't know there were enough porta potties in the world, but on Sunday, the first Sunday of December, the CIM has them all. And it's funny because you guys actually kind of brag about that. That's a big deal when it comes to a marathon.
Yeah, we pull every porta potty you're going to find in Northern California pretty much for this event. We pride ourselves on having a lot of porta potties out at our start line and on course. Again, being a performance running event, we want people to have the best experience out there at the start line, that they have time to get warmed up, get to the bathroom, get to their spot. But also, we don't do wave starts, and wave starts are something a lot of races do, where they'll start just one section of the race and then they'll bring in another section and they'll run it. One of the reasons we don't, for a couple of reasons we don't. One reason is, we are trying to be respectful to the Sacramento community. We don't want to clog the roads up all day, so we get everybody started. We get everybody across that start line in about 15, 20 minutes, and everybody's on course at the same time. But also, it's really what makes it a great performance running event, because everybody's running at the same time. If you're trying to run a certain time, you're going to be able to lock in with a group of other people that are trying to run that time. Not that I'm in this wave and somebody else is in that wave and I can't really run with them, I'm going to have to run over here. Everybody starts at the same time. But because of that, because we have 10,000 people starting at the same time, we need a lot of porta potties out there. So we have more porta potties at our race per runner than any major race in the country. And that's another one of the spectacular shots that it actually gets a lot of photos on race week, are people taking pictures of the line of porta potties that stretches, pretty much almost a mile up the road of just porta potties up at our start line. So that's kind of fun. We appreciate the vendors that we work with. Clean Site, area restrooms. Over the years, Rocket Restrooms has helped us out. We really kind of pull porta potties from everywhere we can find to make sure that we've got those. So yeah, I'm glad we were able to talk bathrooms with everybody here.
Pretty good. That's okay. That was just kicking it off.
That is a big part of these events.
It is. And number two, which I don't think a lot of people know, is when people go off that start line, they are shedding gear, right? And I'm sure a lot of people out there go, where's that gear go to? I don't think a lot of people know what you guys do as an organization. It's pretty amazing. Maybe you can share that.
Yeah, I mean, again, our event is always tried to be a force for good in the Sacramento community, we just kind of find ways. We partner with a lot of charities across the whole event. This event is a platform for fundraising for so many charities. They leverage the race. A lot of charity runners that are running on behalf of them. A lot of our aid stations and volunteer groups are raising money for their charities. The race is a platform for raising close to $500,000 for local and regional charities. But also part of that is we found ways within the race to benefit charities, and we recognized that we had all these people that were coming with old clothes on that they were willing to get rid of just to stay warm at the start, and then when the race starts, they chuck it off to the side of the road, or after they've run for about a mile and they warm up a little bit, they peel it and run. Well, we partner with Goodwill, and they come through and they pick up all of that clothing, and we donate a crazy amount. I don't have it in front of me, but
it's a lot.
Yes, hundreds and hundreds of pounds actually thousands of pounds of clothes to Goodwill Industries. It's a huge shot in the arm for them going into the holidays. They're able to recycle that clothing and get it out. A lot of it is sold through their stores, but they also donate. They kind of dispatch that to a lot of other charities that need clothing. So it doesn't just all go to Goodwill. Goodwill is just kind of our hub for how that clothing gets distributed. So that's just another one of those pieces. We actually earned a really cool award a few years ago. We were recognized as a gold level certified sustainable event. We were one of the first marathons in the country to earn that distinction. We were honored with a sustainability award for events, and a clean air award by Breathe California as well. We've really tried to make an effort to make the event, like I said, a force for good in Sacramento. We know that from a traffic standpoint, it can be sometimes frustrating if you're not aware of it. But ultimately, for the few hours that we're out there, it brings in so much economic impact to the region, $13 million of economic impact to the region from a tourism standpoint, those $500,000 raised for charity, and then some of these other things like the clothes donated and the sustainable practices of our event. It really truly is a force for good in this community, not to mention the force for good that it is in so many people's lives that do participate in this event, that it's an important event to them.
Awesome. Number 3, and I don't know if this just relates to the CIM or just marathons in general, but I just remember those panels. The one big thing that kept getting repeated over and over is don't start fast. That's a big one. Is that a general thing for marathons, or is that in relation to the CIM? That was said a lot at the expo.
Yes. Yeah, that's said so much to people. It's definitely general for marathons in general. I think, it's important. I mean, obviously you're managing 26 miles of effort. Marathon pace for runners actually is a pretty manageable pace. So it feels good. It feels comfortable. And when you add in the excitement of the day, people tend to get a little quick early. They're feeling great. They're excited. And sometimes they get going a little quick and it feels okay early on. And then they have to kind of pay the bills on that in the back half. At CIM, it's even extra important for two reasons. One, our first mile actually from the Folsom Dam down to Oak Avenue is net downhill. And so it can get you rolling pretty fast if you're not careful. And then that can get you in the wrong rhythm. And you can kind of blow through your energy reserves really early in the race. But also our back half of our race, the last 6 to 10 miles, is really flat and fast, which is rare for marathons. And so if you do kind of check down and do a good job of being very disciplined with your pace, you can really make some magic happen in those last 6 to 10 miles. And people like Sarah Vaughn, who broke our course record last year, and Brendan Gregg, who is one of our local runners, our first ever local runner to win the CIM they really took advantage of those last 6 to 10 miles, and they were able to really roll. And we've seen people who do that. So CIM is you kind of have to double down on that. Be careful, don't go out too fast. And it's hard when you got Steve Buzzard out there at the start line pumping everybody up. He plays great music.
It's my fault.
Yeah, you roll everybody out with cake.
Yep.
Great Sacramento band, and everyone's fired up rolling out. But then you get this downhill first mile, and you really have to check down and show some discipline so that you can really take advantage of our second half of our race, which you can really roll on if you've been disciplined in the first half.
Okay, so speaking of that second half of the race, another fun fact, you had mentioned going over the J Street Bridge. This is also talked about. You said, 55 down to 8th, and you're thinking, okay, I've got 50 whatever blocks. Not the case, because if you're from Sacramento, you realize there's other streets in between. That could be a heartbreaker for an out-of-towner.
Yeah, you start counting blocks, and then you're like, wait, where's the next one? There's these other streets mixed in, San Luis, all these other ones down there in East Sac, and so that's a little local home court, for a little home court advantage for the local runners. They kind of know, but I will say that when you get into East Sac, if you've done a good job of not going out too hard, those blocks just blow by, and you're able to really kind of roll through there. There's so much spectator energy in those final 3 or 4 miles. We call it the final 4. Once you cross under the overpass there at Elvis, the final 4 miles, there's so much spectator energy, and it's a beautiful section of our course as you kind of go through East Sac and Midtown, and that the Capitol's coming, and if you're running well, you can just see those blocks just kind of start to peel away. And people have just really miraculous, just great finishes, and then they're so excited when they come across that finish line. We've actually talked to people that some of our elite runners actually express that they are never more sore after a marathon than after CIM. CIM wrecks them the hardest because they are able to really race those final 6 miles. A lot of other marathons, you kind of get into those final 5 or 6 miles and you're just kind of hanging on and getting through it. But this one allows you to really race for 26 miles. And some of them run very fast over those final 10K. And when they do that, they're tapping into everything their body has, and they're truly finishing on empty. And they wake up the next day feeling more wrecked at after CIM than they do after most marathons. So it's really a fun challenge, those final 6 miles, and that's really what makes the marathon special, and why people put the stickers on their car and make a big deal out of it and spend so much money and time and effort to do it. is really the magic happens in those final 6 miles. Most people that prepare for CIM or marathons, usually their longest training run is about 18 to 20 miles. So that's all they've done. So those final 6 miles is really where that uncertainty lies, and also where a lot of that magic lies, and the challenge really lies in those final 6 miles.
I love how you describe that, because there are so many layers to the marathon. Like you said, it does not even compare to like a 5K, which is just a totally different component. And so the last piece of the CIM before we wrap up this first segment is the spectators. Okay, we've mentioned they're always along the way, but maybe it would help because, I always think of the finish line, right? People trying to get down to the finish line. And I know this year that you added some bleachers, which I think that's going to be cool because you're going to be able to have people kind of rise above and see the finish line as it comes. What would be a good time? We know the race starts at 7. You're usually going to see that first finisher a little after 9 o'clock. What advice would you give to people that maybe want to get down to the state capitol and be at the end?
Yeah, watching the finish is just a fun. If you know someone running, it's obviously great to watch them finish and support them, but it's just great to be there and just see all the different pieces of humanity coming across. Like I said, people that are doing this for their livelihood. They're professional runners. They're running for a national championship. They're running for prize money. To people that are serious sub-elite runners that are trying to qualify for the Boston Marathon, maybe trying to qualify for the Olympic trials, maybe trying to become a professional runner that are very serious coming across. Then all those kind of weekend warrior recreational runners that are coming in that are trying to qualify for the Boston Marathon or run their personal best or a personal record because they've done other marathons. And then you have these people that, hey, this is just something they've always wanted to do, run a marathon, and now they're going to do it. They might be people from Sacramento where they just know this is a cool event and they want to say that they've done it, and they're out there hacking their way through it. And then you've got people where they're running for something, for a charity, maybe someone in their life that's passed away. Maybe they had a serious health diagnosis and they're using this as a way to change that, and they're coming across, and that's a very powerful moment. So that finish line really has, as they say, all the feels. And so if you do want to get down there, we've got bleachers and a lot of other places where people can step up and just be down there on Capitol grounds and take it in. But you want to plan ahead. Obviously, there's free parking all around downtown Sacramento on Sundays. That's one of the nice things about the race being on Sunday. But there are only a couple different entrances. We close off all the area around the Capitol. There's only 3 entrances, one on the L Street side at 10th and 2 on the N Street side on 10th and 9th. So you got to go through those entrances. It's a free event. It's not ticketed, but we do have security checks there. And then you can get in those bleachers and watch people finish. It's important if you are tracking a runner, a family or friend, that we have two finish lines. We have an A side and a B side. It's maybe ask them ahead of time if they have an A bib or a B bib. They'll know that based on their bib, and then you'll know which side to sit on. You're good. You can track your runners online, which is great. We have a tracking app. You can see how they're hitting all their checkpoints. It'll show when they're projected to finish, and that'll guide you of when you want to be down there at the finish line. You can always watch. Probably I usually recommend 1 or 2 spots on course, but if you're trying to see them too many times, you might get caught behind some of our road closures, and then you'll miss them, and you might miss their finish. So you don't want to flirt with that. If you're trying to watch a runner and you want to be at the finish, I usually don't recommend you watching any spot after about 20 miles. Like Loman's Plaza would be the last spot you'd probably catch them and still have enough time to get to the finish. So usually trying to get somewhere early in the race, maybe, as I said, mile 10 out there in Old Fair Oaks, or even mile 6 out in Citrus Heights is a good spot. And then you can kind of move maybe down the range a little bit, mile 16, 17, 18, all the way up to about 20, and then head to the finish line if you're trying to follow a runner. But if you just want to come out and cheer the runners on, find the spot that's nearest to your house and just cruise on out there on the side of the road. It's just a fun time to watch all the runners coming by. Runners also love funny, inspirational signs. And you see the coolest signs out there people make. Some of them are very sarcastic. Some of them are funny. Some of them are inspirational. But the runners appreciate that. It's a cool part of the marathon culture. So, think of some creative things. Go out there and make those signs. Bring a cowbell or something and cheer the runners on. or just head down to the finish line and take it all in. It's a great day, especially if the weather's nice.
Yes, and it will be. It's going to be great. And how is that really for a total breakdown of the California International Marathon? Huge undertaking, but so beneficial to the city of Sacramento. Scott's done such a great job of really kind of hopefully just giving you that perspective of what the CIM is all about here in the capital city. And what if I told you that's just the first segment? We're going to come back in the second segment. We're going to talk about the Sacramento Running Association because I do want to highlight and spotlight. Again, I think it's something that people don't realize how important it is to this city. And this guy that we're talking to is a big part of it. He's the executive director. Then we'll get a little personal. We might talk, I don't know, fantasy baseball and Dr. Pepper. There's some amazing stories that go along with this Scott Abbott. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that first half of my conversation with Scott Abbott, breaking down the CIM, getting a little bit into the Sacramento Running Association. Of course, we got more to come, but as we always do in this break, we want to take care of our sponsors, okay? And a big thank you to the four of them that have been along the way, along the journey, and just very appreciative. So we start with Matt Gouget. He actually is featured in episode number 28. He is better known as Matt the Mortgage Guy. Him and his team are not only serving people with refinances and mortgages in the capital city, but because of Matt's popularity on YouTube, they are now connected with U Mortgage. So now they're delivering to people nationwide. Pretty cool how Matt was able to do this. And on top of that, he added a podcast, which I believe he's about 20 episodes in, called Get Better Every Day. And you can see our conversation. We're episode number 9. So I was honored to be a part of that podcast. Here's the nuts and bolts of it. For me and my wife, we needed a refinance. I went to Matt, told him what we wanted to do. From start to finish, took about a month. Had questions along the way, they answered them. Okay, I didn't have to wait 2 or 3 days to get an answer. It came usually pretty quickly. We got the refinance. In addition, they helped lower our home insurance and our flood insurance. Okay, you take all that, add it all together, I'm a very satisfied customer, and I think you will be too. So Matt, the Mortgage Guy, big thank you to you and your team. Little Whale Swim School is the premier swim school right here in Sacramento, located at 4106 El Camino Avenue. You can find them at littlewhaleswim.com. And I know even though the months are colder, this is actually the perfect time because guess what? It's always summer at Little Whale. They have an indoor facility, so that means you got a nice heated pool, and they've got lessons for everybody. So you can check them on the website or call them directly at 916-790-5945. Anya Hall is their fearless leader, and she is featured right here on this program in episode 6. Amazing story about how she got to where she is. And she also shared with me a few months ago that Little Whale Swim School might be expanding. So if we hear anything, we'll make sure that you know. 2 down, 2 to go. Want to get you to the original 2. Pit Boss Jerky, led by Joe Green. We just gave you the news in the opening. He is now available in Knee Deep Brewery, which is located in Auburn, and will be featured in all Amy Hardware stores. We got 2 of them right here in Sacramento and 1 that just opened in El Dorado Hills. That's the best way to get your hands on it. You can also call 916-769-6807. Yes, it's Joe's personal number, but we like to call it the order board, and just check out the flavors, okay? You have Experience the Buzz, which, yes, is named after this program. One of my favorites before ETB was Raspberry Apple Chipotle. Island Teriyaki is very good as well. Honey Gold Sweet Summer, Urban Smoke, Big Heat, Keto Mix. I mean, you name it. The Mad Scientist has it. And the Mad Scientist, of course, being Joe Green. So check them out. Again, Knee Deep Brewery in Auburn. Also Amy Hardware in the 3 locations that I told you, 916-769-6807. And also, I should tell you that Joe Green was featured in episode 26. In episode 25, Troy Rousey of R5 Stitch and Print, another fine sponsor, has been here since day 1. We tell his story. He's got an amazing story that you have to check out. Great on screen printing and embroidery. Has done so much work for me. In fact, R5. Yeah, there you go. Just right there. Quality, okay? And usually, and I should say timely as well, okay? So that's always big. You can check them out at r5print.com or call them at 916-454-3773. So those are our 4 sponsors. We got to get back to this amazing conversation. More with our guest on episode 105. His name's Scott Abbott. Let's get back to it.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss an episode of Experience the Buzz by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. It means everything. Now, back to the show.
All right, well, welcome back to Experience the Buzz. I'm Steve Buzzard, along with Scott Abbott, our guest for today's episode as we get ready for the California International Marathon. Again, when you hear this episode, it will be airing. We're probably going to let it go on Thursday, which then will lead into, we'll make it a 4-day weekend. So you get the podcast with Scott Abbott breaking down the CIM. And then we got the expo, which will be on Friday and Saturday. I believe Friday 9 to 7. Saturday will be 9 to 5. Race day will be on Sunday. And so Sunday, everything kicks off at the start line at 7 o'clock in Folsom. And we'll probably have the first set of runners, the winners, the elite runners. Kevin Selby will be at the announcing line. He does the elite runners, and they'll come in a little after 9 o'clock. And then I'll take over probably around 10 o'clock and announce the rest of the way until 1:30. And I have to say, Scott, like for me, obviously, just my goal is say as many names as you can. You obviously can't get everybody in, but I always try to break it down, especially during the expo when I'm talking about like, hey, if I say your first, last, and where you're from, that's very special. If I just say your first name, just know there's about 20 of you. And if I don't say your name, I truly do apologize. But my favorites are the ones that come in that final hour, that 12:30 to 1:30, because in your mind, you're going, wait, they've been at it since 7 o'clock. Because you said everybody gets released. It takes about 15 minutes to get everybody out, which, by the way, that's amazing in itself. But truly, it is those stories. And that's the thing that I really take to the announcing booth is I wonder what their story is. And I know you really talked about that in the first segment. But to me, that is what is the special part of the marathon.
Yeah, and you do such a good job with that, and let me just, kind of, speak a little bit about the job that you do. When I took over as executive director, a lot of races have national race announcers that come in. They're kind of a traveling roadshow. They go from race to race, and they're professional race announcers. And I felt like CIM, even though it is a national race, an international race, it's also a local event. It's an important local event, and it's important for us to, and you check both of those boxes for us. You do a really good job. You're obviously a pro, but then also, you're a familiar voice here in Sacramento, and you can speak for the local people coming in when, their town, you even know some of these people and some of their stories. You've seen them over the years, and it's an important element of our event. You do such a good job both at the start line and the finish line. So I think that really kind of encompasses a little bit in a little bit of a microcosm of kind of what CIM is. It is a national professional event, but it's also, at its core, it's a local event. You really kind of encompass that for us as you kind of check both of those boxes. You're a professional announcer, but you're also, through and through, you're 916, and that's what this event is. And so, but yeah, and I think that last hour, you're absolutely right. It's a special time because you see people just coming in, and even the elite runners talk about that. They're like, for me, I'm only running 2 hours or so. Like these people are out there 6-7 hours. It's a totally different physical endeavor for them. Even obviously they're not running as fast, but they're doing something for 6 or 7 hours. It's a very different event, and a different challenge on their bodies than it is on those elite runners that are done in 2.5 hours.
Yeah, when I think about my journey of broadcasting, I had to say, Scott, I need to give thanks back to you because I remember that meeting at Bella Brew. It was you, me, and Eli Ash, and you were like, "Hey, I'm not sure if you would be up for this, but we think it'd be really cool. Do you want to be the announcer for the CIM?" And I had to wrap my mind around that because for me, I wanted to make sure that I was prepared and there was an elite part. And I think the first year I did it, and I think we quickly came away and said, okay, let's get someone like a Kevin Selby to take care of that, but I'll take care of the rest. And it really has opened my eyes in so many ways that I never could have described. And really just to be a part of that event now, because it used to be like, okay, I knew what it was and would maybe go cheer out a year or two, but now to be at the finish line, I mean, my gosh, you couldn't ask for anything better. So thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, let's talk SRA, Sacramento Running Association. I mean, I was looking at the website alone. I didn't realize like all the things that you do. So for the layman out there, can you kind of break down what the SRA is all about?
Yeah, and it was created to really be the organization to put on CIM, but then the growth of CIM and the success of the event has really allowed us to grow and kind of do year-round programming to really benefit, to really facilitate the sport of running in Sacramento. That's really what we do, and we do it from cradle to grave. We put on youth events. We do obviously put on events for the community and adult events, and support the running community. We also really try to support the scholastic community, the middle school, high school, and college sport of it. A little less about the activity of running and more about the sport of running. That's what SRA is all about, because there are so many organizations and companies like Fleet Feet Sports and other nonprofits that really kind of focus on the health and fitness part of running and being active. And we really kind of focus on the sport of it and really trying to facilitate the sport at so many levels, starting at the youth level, putting on youth cross country races. We created a youth cross country series that has over 1,000 runners every year running. Again, there was no Little League for running, and we've basically created that by creating a youth cross country series in the fall. So it allows kids to really not just see running as something you do when you get in trouble in PE or in trouble in soccer and they tell you to go run a lap. It's like, oh, hey, running's a sport and it can be fun. We do a great job. We put on a really high production youth cross country races. The kids jump over hay bales. They get they just have a great time out there, and they earn stickers and rewards, and the kids have an awesome time. We also put on a youth running program in every school in the Sac City Unified School District called the STRIDE program, and that touches over 30,000 kids in the Sacramento City Unified School Districts. They run, and we track their miles in school, either in PE or at lunchtime. They got little card scanners where when they're running, they scan their cards, and they have class competitions who can see which class gets the most miles. They have inter-school competitions to see which schools get the most miles in the Sac City Unified. And we've had, over the time of the STRIDE program, kids in the Sac City Unified School District who've now done it for 6 years have run hundreds and hundreds of miles, and hopefully not just changing their fitness goals, but also seeing running as a sport rather than just something that like I said, is potentially a punishment or something, and really can kind of enjoy that and is ingrained in it from a really young age. So that's what kind of talks a little bit about what we do at the youth level. Obviously, at the community level, we're putting on major running events, the CIM being the largest, but we have other running events. We put on the Sacktown Run every year in April, which is a great race. And we've done the Super Sunday Run on Super Bowl Sunday. We put on the Run the Parkway event. So we do those kind of mass participation events for adults and for everybody in the community. We try to support a lot of our running clubs in the Sacramento area, really kind of be the hub of our running clubs, and really kind of facilitate those. And then also the other piece that we do is we really support elite running. We support elite runners in the Sacramento area, anybody that's trying to really bridge that gap from college to the professional level. We can kind of support them, help people that are trying to pursue Olympic dreams. But then also we host championship performance professional running events, not just at CIM, but also at the Sacktown Run. We also bid to bring championship events here to Sacramento. The United States Olympic Trials for track and field was here. We've hosted the U.S. Marathon Championships. We bring a lot of NCAA championship events here, NCAA track and field, NCAA cross country. By having an organization like ours in Sacramento or in our town that's locally focused, we can facilitate those bids and really bring those here. And there are very few cities in the United States that have so many championship running events coming through their city, and that's because we have an organization like ours that's fortunate to have a successful marathon that helps us have year-round programming to really make Sacramento the premier running community in the United States.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, because one of the events
there trying to encompass
no, that's okay. That's okay. Because one of the events
obviously
that comes to my mind that you throw, and I'm not sure how it's structured, but I think it's very unique. You have middle schoolers, high schoolers, and collegiates all in one place. And I think you do 3 separate events, but the key part is that they are all in one place so that these young kids can say, oh, I could do this at the high school or the college level. That's smart.
Yeah, that's a cool event. That's the Capital Cross Challenge. We put that on in the fall, and it's a cross-country event. And we have youth, middle school, high school, and college all competing on the same course on the same day. And it's absolutely right. Some of these kids that have participated in our youth cross-country series, they run in that Capital Cross Challenge, and while they're out there, University of Oregon and UCLA and Cal and Stanford and are there competing on the same course they're competing in, doing the same thing they're doing, and they kind of see that like, hey, actually this is something I can do. It's not just something fun that I've done and gotten a sticker or a medal. It's something that can carry me all the way through college and then ultimately professionally. So and then supporting the high school community here, trying to put on events to make our local scholastic sport just more robust, higher production, and trying to support them and just make it fun to be a runner in Sacramento, whether you're youth, high school, college, or an adult runner or a professional. Really, our running association is kind of the backbone of all of that. And so, Sacramento is such a great spot. We've got one of the great resources in the country for running, which is the American River Parkway. Such a beautiful venue for running, and we've done a lot of work with the Parkway Foundation. We raise a lot of money for them to keep that, such a great resource for runners, and to have that just kind of wind its way from downtown, all the way up to Folsom, is just such a great, kind of vein for a watering hole for runners in this community, and truly gives us a sense of place for our running community. So that's another great part of this of our running community, and we really try to do a great job of supporting the Parkway.
Well, it's interesting, too, because this really ties into your own personal story, because I was listening to another podcast where you're kind of telling, like, how you grew up. Like, a lot of people say, well, okay, Scott Abbott around the running world, he's probably been doing this for his whole life, and that's not the truth. And, I would think Disneyland would be an inspiration for different reasons, but for this reason, it's what got you into running. You have to share this one because I think it's too good.
Yeah, it's funny you picked that story. That's what kind of got me into the sport myself. I played sports growing up and just love sports. I'm a sports fan, huge sports fan, and I love playing all the ball sports and everything. And then when I got into high school, I was just trying to kind of find my way where I can kind of continue in sport. But obviously things get more serious and more competitive, and you kind of start to pick where you can kind of make your way. And I kind of stumbled upon the cross country team. I was playing soccer and doing some other things, but I had heard that the cross country team had a trip to Disneyland, and I thought that sounded pretty cool. And so I had a couple buddies on the team, and I'll go out and see how I do. And then I found out that they only take the top kids to the meet where they go to Disneyland. So that really kind of spurred me on to say, I can't just be out here. I got to actually try to do well so I can make the bus to Disneyland. And that's really where it started for me, was just trying to make the bus to Disneyland. And then I made the bus, and the rest is history. And I went on to have a great running career at Jesuit. Jesuit, is got the premier high school distance running program maybe in the United States. They have a coach there. If you live here in Sacramento, you're probably aware of him in the running community. His name is Walt Lang. He's been coaching there for 50 years. Wow. And he has a record that's unmatched in sport, not just cross country, but high school sport in general. No high school team has won more section championships in their sport than Jesuit's boys cross country team has. That's any sport, any gender, at any level in the state of California is the boys cross country team at Jesuit under Walt Lang. So I was so fortunate. I was just trying to make the bus to Disneyland, but then I got this opportunity to be mentored by this legendary coach who really ignited the fire for the sport for me, and then that carried me through high school and then ultimately into college, and then here I am now. It's my profession, and I've been able to combine my passion with my profession, but it all goes back to being fortunate to get the opportunity to run for Coach Walt Lang at Jesuit High School.
And that was only one mentor. I mean, we're going to get to the UCLA piece, which is interesting too, because that takes you down to SoCal, and then you get another incredible cross-country coach in Bob Larson. But that piece where you had that moment where you had to make a decision to change, I think that's very important, especially to kids. Is like, And you mentioned, you said cross country used to be like that would be a punishment or something. But see, sports are looked at differently now. You have your big three, you have your football, you have your basketball, your baseball. But, I'm seeing more kids doing things like cross country and track and lacrosse and water polo, rugby being a big one, especially at Jesuit. I mean, these kids I've seen grown up that said, okay, this is not going to happen. And then they star in rugby, and it's crazy. But I think this is very important for kids to know that realize is if plan A doesn't work out and it involves the big three, that the plan B is not a bad plan.
Yeah, and I just encourage people to play all sports growing
Yeah.
up. It's I played them all. If there was a sport going on, I did it. And I think ultimately that made me a better runner. I brought athleticism to the sport that I had from others doing other sports, and I think it works both directions. I think even in the big three, as you say, if you're doing some other sports, I think you're going to bring those other kind of multilateral pieces to that. So, and besides, it's just fun. It's fun to just play sports and be on different teams and be on teams that win, be on teams that lose, be on teams with great coaches, be on teams with not great coaches. And, just kind of, I think that there's so much growth. Sports is such a laboratory for growth that is, I just think that, it's so important that I think, that you get out there and just play sports. But you're right, as you kind of move along, at some point, you kind of have to, if you want to continue in sport, you have to kind of find where you can be most competitive, and you can't, you do kind of have to have some recognition of like, here's who I am, here's where my skills are. Yeah, I can bring some of these other things that I, did well in other sports, but ultimately kind of find that sport. And ultimately, at the end of the day, achievement is fun. And if you find a place where you can kind of achieve, it doesn't matter what sport it is, you're going to have a ton of fun. And I had so much fun when I found the sport of cross country and distance running. And I just kind of struggled through some rough soccer seasons where I wasn't getting to play as much, and I was kind of frustrated. But then when I found running, it was like, this is great, because ultimately I determine my playing time. If I work hard and I get better and I run fast, like that's it. You're like it was very pure and a sport where what you put in is what you get out. The clock doesn't lie. There's no ambiguity over it. And I also love that when I talk about achievement, I'm not talking about just winning awards or being the fastest or the best. Like, huge achievement comes from just being better than yourself. And the sport of running provided that on such a binary, level where you could just kind of see, like, I ran faster than I ran yesterday, or I ran faster this week than I ran last week. I can see that improvement that maybe is a little more subjective in other sports, and that can kind of really fuel you and spur you on. And it can be a very personal pursuit. And then you combine that where you're surrounded by teammates that are also going through that at the same time, and you guys are working on that together, and then you kind of come together as a team and can kind of display that. It really spoke to me, and it was something that I just loved. And once I saw that opportunity where, hey, the harder I work, the better I can be. Now I know the sky's the limit. And I know that's true in all sports, but in running it was very apparent. It was just sort of like, oh gosh, if I run and I run a little faster and a little farther, I can get better, and then run a little faster and a little farther, and you just keep doing that, and then ultimately next thing you know, you're doing things that you never could imagine, weeks or months before.
Yeah, non-runners may not know this, but I mean, cross-country, track, they're actually team sports. Like, yes, you are competing individually, but it is truly a team sport, which I think is very unique to the sport itself. So you go from Jesuit to UCLA. Bob Larson, we mentioned him, another great cross-country coach. It's like, man, I mean, talk about the 1-2 punch for you. You couldn't have had it any better. Yeah,
I consider myself lucky, especially at Jesuit, but I also think that, Jesuit provided me a platform to have the opportunity to run at a place like UCLA and have the opportunity. And I had some great teammates at Jesuit. We won 3 state titles when I was there. We were the first team to ever win back-to-back state championships. And I teamed with some unbelievable runners. Matt Farley was a state champion at Jesuit, and he went on to run at Stanford. Michael Stember was a great personal friend, a classmate of mine, and he went on to run at Stanford, was an All-American there, and then went on and ran in the Olympic Games. And he was a teammate of mine in high school, these guys, and that just kind of opened the door to like what was out there. But also having that kind of success brought a spotlight to our program, and then it allowed me to have the opportunity to maybe be recruited by places like UCLA and Georgetown and some of these other places that I was looking at coming out of high school. And so, and when I got a chance to meet Bob Larson and see what he was doing there with the UCLA program and see who he was as a person, he reminded me a lot of Walt Lang and the experience I had at Jesuit. And obviously UCLA is a great institution, so it was just a great opportunity for me to go down there, be on that team. I was able to team with some other great runners there, including Meb Keflezighi, who was on the team at UCLA at the time, and at that time was a very good runner, but then later went on to be one of the greatest American distance runners of all time. He's the only guy to win the New York and the Boston Marathon and medal in the Olympics. And he was a teammate of mine, and he's become an inspirational person in the sport of running. I was fortunate to be his roommate and teammate in college and have Bob Larson as a coach. So, yeah, every step of the way, I've been a part of these great programs with these great coaches and have these great teammates, and it really made for, a special experience for me in the sport, which I think has allowed me to kind of continue in the sport, both through coaching after college and then now as the executive director of the Sacramento Running Association. And I think being surrounded by those great people in the sport really kind of gave me that kind of incubation for being able to continue in the sport.
Well, let's not forget that piece, because it was important, because coming out of that, coaching was the thing you wanted to do. And I remember you were at St. Michael's and you were coaching, doing a great job, and it was cross country. But then you went to Sac State, and you just turned that program around. And I'm trying to remember, Scott, how many years were you there? Because I know you came to a point where you had to make a decision, and maybe you can dive into that as well. But your time at Sac State was some good years.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed, it was after college, I was kind of figuring out what I wanted to do. Obviously, was kind of near the end of my competitive running days. I kind of, saw the writing on the wall a little bit. I wasn't Meb Keflezighi. I saw that that's what was required to go on and continue in the sport professionally. So I was kind of finding out where my next path was going to be. I really enjoyed working with young people. I had the opportunity to that's where I met you, Steve, and we were teaching together. And you gave me a great opportunity to work with young people and coaching and at the elementary and middle school level. And it made me show that I really just enjoyed working with young people, but I still love sports and loved the sport of running. And obviously the way where I was able to combine those pieces was to get into coaching at a high level. I actually went down to UCLA, got my master's degree in sport management, started my coaching career at UCLA as an assistant coach at my alma mater. After Bob Larson retired, I joined on the staff there. That really got me started in coaching. And then when we got pregnant with my wife and I got pregnant with our first kid, we decided that trying to raise a family in Southern California as a coach didn't really make a ton of sense. So we moved back up here to Sacramento. I was very fortunate the job at Sacramento State opened up, so I could move back to my hometown, raise our family here in Sacramento, which is, there isn't a better place to raise a family, in my opinion. And I've been able, through coaching and some of the work I've done, I've been able to be all over the country, and I still don't think there's a better place to raise a family than right here in Sacramento. So I got to do that, and then also continue in the job that I loved, which was coaching at the college level. So I coached at Sac State for 7 years for 7 years there. Yeah, and that was really a lot of brought great joy to me, because I was doing what I loved in coaching, but I also were now at a place where I was creating impact in a community that meant something to me here in Sacramento. So the chance to turn that program around, when I got there, the distance program had struggled for a long time because there had been a turnover of a lot of coaches, and I think people had used Sac State as a stepping stone to other jobs, or kind of just passing through, and I saw it as an opportunity to really lay some roots here in Sacramento. I wanted to raise my family here. I wasn't looking to start at Sac State and then move on somewhere else. I said, hey, I really want to grow the program here. And in a short amount of time, we had a great coaching staff at Sac State. We really built that program into being a source of major pride for the university. We won in 7 years. We won numerous conference championships, and we're recognized as one of the top mid-major track and field programs in the entire United States. We had some of the top runners in the country. I coached numerous All-Americans there, and we really built a great program. And it was fun, and it was happening right here in Sacramento, and it was happening with Sacramento kids. We were recruiting, we were kind of really securing our borders and recruiting local talent, really developing relationships with high school coaches. The high school coaches were recognizing, like, hey, Sac State's a great place. After you finish, you can stay home and you can run here, and you're going to be part of a great program. And so that was really fun to do. As you mentioned, I kind of got to a point. I said that we had one kid. Well, we ended up having 3 kids, and in a short amount of time, and it was really challenging to be a coach, a college coach, and try to raise a family. Those 2 things are very, very difficult to do. College coaching requires a lot of time and a lot of time away, and especially at in the sport of cross country and track, because cross country is a fall sport, indoor track is a winter sport, and outdoor track is a spring sport. So there is no off season. And I was gone probably 30, 40 weeks a year. And that's, trying to raise a family doing that. I really, commend my wife, Katie. She was really the person that they kind of, did the dirty work of, being a parent when our kids were little, and allowed me to kind of chase my, passion. But then when it got to the point where, hey, I was going to have to make decisions about, or not make decisions. My work was forcing me to miss school Christmas programs or a little league game. It was at that point where it was like, hey, this, as much as I love doing this, nothing's more important than my family, and I would hate to be, spending time with other people's kids and missing out on time with my own kids and my own family. And so I made that decision to leave college coaching, and one of the things that made it easy to do was this job at the SRA opened up for me, and and to be able to continue combining my passion with my profession, but then be able to do so with a little better work-life balance is really been just a blessing for me.
Well, and Scott, you mentioned the word impact. That's what I think about when I think of you. When it comes to the running world, especially as it relates to Sacramento and your passion for Sacramento, the fact that you get it, you understand it, that's kind of like why I'm doing this podcast. It's for that reason. I think Sacramento is a very special place. And, I always talk to people about small world moments. They're all over a place. I mean, you can go out and it's 2 levels of separation, and you're just like, this is absolutely crazy. And so I love the fact that you get that. And that brings me to the last piece, which is family, which is great, because one special thing, because I think the obvious question I should have asked in the CIM segment is, have you run the CIM?
I actually have. I've run it one time.
Okay.
So I can, I that gives me legitimacy, for in around here at CIM, where it's like I've done it. Actually, my senior year of college.
Okay.
Right after cross country season ended, I wasn't sure where my running career was going to take me. And so, I didn't know if I was going to ever continue running. So I said, well, I should probably run a marathon. And it just so happened that, hey, my hometown marathon happens right after my cross country season in December. So I was in shape from cross country. I came up here during my final exam week. My dad drove me up to the start line, and I ran. I was fortunate that my house was at the 18-mile mark, so I was like, I'm not sure I can run a marathon. I'm just kind of coming off of cross country. I hadn't done much marathon training, and I said, well, I can always just drop out when I get to my house at mile 18 if things aren't going well. But I was able to kind of persist on. I ran the marathon. I actually did pretty well that day, and that was my one marathon that I ran for many years until later in life I decided to take it up again. But yes. I did run CIM, so I have my CIM card officially. So that was in 2000. I ran that. So yeah, I've run CIM.
Well, in a nutshell, I mean, what was that like for you? Like you say, you're kind of not unprepared for it, but you didn't really go into it the way that we kind of talked about in the opening segment with people. But getting to the finish line had to be pretty special.
It was. I made every mistake you can make. All those things talked about, going out too fast. I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, the longest run I'd ever done in my life, I think, was about 14 miles at that point. Because, in college cross country, I mean, you're racing 8K, 10K, shorter events. You don't need to be training, mega miles like you would for a marathon. So I hadn't run much more than 14 or 15 miles. And here I am trying to run 26 miles, and I didn't know anything about fueling, hydrating, anything during the run, pacing. I was a mess out there, but I loved every step of it, running through the streets of Sacramento, the streets we drive on, to have those closed down, and you can just kind of run down the middle of them. When I was blowing through my neighborhood, just running down the middle of Fair Oaks Boulevard, it's just a fun feeling, especially as you get into those later miles, running down L Street towards the Capitol. It's just cool, and I had fun. But yes, I was completely unprepared and didn't do it the right way, but I had fun, and I think just being young and fit, I was able to have a good day out there. But I definitely broke every rule of marathoning that day. So.
But that bridges to the next thing, which I think was a bucket list item, which was really cool. And I don't think I knew this piece. Is it true that both you and Katie ran the Boston Marathon for your 40th birthday? And we need to explain the age 40 because in running terms, that means masters. So a lot of people don't know what that means. So maybe you can kind of tell us what was behind that story, because that had to be pretty cool as well.
Yeah, first of all, you're bringing Katie up, and it's important to mention that she was also a runner, my wife, Katie, and we didn't meet through running, but we had that in common after we met, and she's actually probably had a more accomplished post-collegiate running career. She stayed in the sport longer than I did. She ran at Sac State, and then she stayed in the sport, and she actually ran CIM. She was the top local finisher at CIM back in the early 2000s. And so she was a really great runner. And honestly, before I dive into what you're talking about with the Boston Marathon, that's the beauty of, to me, of the running community. Like, the running community has brought so many amazing people into my life. Nobody more so than my wife, Katie, but you just meet so many great people. I think everybody is just vetted when they're a runner. As soon as I meet a runner, it's like they're already vetted like that. They already have they already have credential in my life. I've even joked, I think actually my wife is the one that joked about it, like I'd toss my keys to a runner and just, let him go park my car, no problem. That's one of those things where, like, there's just something about the running community. We all share a common bond, but also it's made up of a lot of really, really good people, and no more so than my wife, Katie, and us being able to kind of have that connection through running. What we decided when we turned 40 was, I don't know whose idea it was, if it was hers or mine, but we decided to go, for our 40th birthdays, to go run the Boston Marathon. So we had to qualify. We both ran the Santa Rosa Marathon, qualified for the Boston Marathon. And then after we turned 40, we went and ran Boston in 2018, which was a ton of fun. Being 40, as you said, makes you a masters runner, which is a new kind of age bracket, so to speak, and a new competitive bracket. So it kind of gives you new life in your competitive running, or for my competitive running. All of a sudden, I went from being a guy who's, couldn't hack it with the younger 20-year-olds to now a guy who's a spring chicken in the masters world. And so went to Boston, had a great experience out there. It was a miserable day. The weather was horrific, one of the worst weather they've ever had at Boston. But Boston Marathon is, kind of the Super Bowl of running. And to get the chance to compete in that was so much fun. And doing so with Katie for our 40th birthdays was fun. And I also went with my team. I run for a Masters team, and we went out there and participated. And we actually won the Masters Championship at the Boston Marathon that day, which was super cool. We didn't even know we were out there just kind of hacking through was a torrential northeastern storm, and just trying to get to the finish line. And then afterwards, like we won. So that was kind of cool. So I actually had a pretty good day that day. And it was one of those ones where the faster you ran, the quicker you got out of the storm, and so that just kind of spurned us along a little bit. So that was fun.
That's good stuff. And as we wrap this up, we now get to the next generation. And we don't have to mention anything, but your oldest son is now at Jesuit High School, and he is a cross country runner. So I am so interested to hear from a dad's perspective. Like, we've watched him do his thing at St. Michael's, and we clearly know that the kid has got talent, but now he's here. Do you feel for yourself like is it strange for you to see this playing out in front of you?
Yeah, it's a little strange, but more than anything, it's just special. It's a special to be able to see. We, obviously, he runs. It's like, well, obviously both your parents are runners. You're going to be good at running. And unfortunately, that's an unfair thing because honestly, and Steve, my son, you had an opportunity to coach him and teach him. He's such a hard worker and is so disciplined. And he is much better than I or Katie ever were. And so everything that he's doing, and he does it not just in the sport of running, he does it in all aspects of his life, is impressive. And so the fact that I don't like that it's reduced down sometimes. Like, oh, he's good at running because his parents are good at running. He's good at running because he's a special kid that works really, really hard and is successful at a lot of things that he does. But it has been really, really fun to watch him just achieve in a variety of areas in his life, and running being one of them. Is special for me and Katie both because it's something that's important to us. But we didn't really push our kids into running at all. In fact, he didn't do any running clubs or anything like that. He's just been somebody who's sort of shown that talent through running the mile in PE class and some different things. And then he got the opportunity. I mean, he's at Jesuit High School right now, which I spoke about, having this great, cross-country program. And the same coach is there. They coach me, which is pretty crazy. He's been there for 50 years. So to see my son running, wearing the same high school jersey I did, but also running for the coach, my coach, who had such a big impact on my life, and getting to see him go through that, it's kind of getting to relive your life again in a really, really small way, which is kind of crazy. And so it's just fun. We're going down to the state meet. He's running in the high school state meet this weekend. I had great memories from winning state championships, and it's in the same spot, and they're staying in the same hotel, and they're going to eat dinner in the same restaurant the night before, and he's wearing the same uniform. So some of that stuff is fun for me, but it's also been great just to step back and see how he has embraced that, and how it's brought a lot of his own personality out, and how he's kind of making it his own too. He's doing it in different ways than I did it, different ways than Katie did it. And even though there's some similarities, that's what makes it special. But seeing him do it on his own and in his own way, and better. I mean, he's way better than I ever was, and so that's been kind of fun to see. And it's great that he's got such a great coach and a great program that Katie and I don't feel like we have to inject ourselves in any way to kind of be like, well, you should. We just kind of sit back. We're like, hey, you're in good hands. Do what coach says. Do what your teammates are doing. You're in a great program, and he's having so much fun, and that's fun for me. So it's cool. Yeah.
Good stuff. And thank you for sharing that, because I think that's so important. I'm glad you explained it that way too, because that's the thing. It speaks to your son and who he is overall, not just in the running world. And he's applying that right now. We're seeing it firsthand. And so I want to finish this way. I had mentioned fantasy baseball and Dr. Pepper. And I can't remember if the conversations were between you and I or between Katie and I, but there's that mention, like the Dr. Pepper thing threw me off because I, in my mind, knew you were an avid runner and stuff, but there was an obsession with Dr. Pepper. So I guess the first question is, has that toned down quite a bit, which I think it has, and you just give it to us and people will understand. I was blown away.
A major misnomer is that runners are these healthy people. Like, they're not at all. In fact, most runners I know are some of the most unhealthy, have some of the most unhealthy habits. In fact, sometimes running allows you to maybe skirt through some and make you look healthier than you are. But, so, and I've got, I eat like crazy.
We all do. Donuts, donuts, late night snacking. Yes.
Yeah, I'm a guy who just powers through. When McDonald's started allowing the 29-cent hamburgers and 39, I went and got the max. They let you have 20. I'd eat all 20 of them. I've eaten 6 double-doubles before, so I am not a healthy person at all, but probably the tip of that iceberg of lack of health is it was my Dr. Pepper habit. Really, it was a soda habit. I'm non-discriminatory soda drinker.
Okay.
Dr. Pepper being my favorite. And it got to a point where it was a pretty bad habit of mine. As much as it's a funny thing, it was a really bad habit. I was drinking, north of probably 13, 14 sodas a day. Just mowing through like 2 liters in my car. I mean, it was really unhealthy, disgusting habit. I think it's a kind of, a fun vice, maybe a little bit, that you can joke about it. But if it was smoking or,
Right.
gambling or some other thing that you're doing, you're just kind of like, this is something bad. And I was drinking way too much soda. So I have toned it down a little bit, but I am a Dr. Pepper fiend. I love Dr. Pepper. And I don't know if I'll ever cut it out, but I have kind of got it under control a little bit better and can enjoy 2 or 3 a day rather than 14 or 15 a day.
Oh my gosh.
And so it got bad when one of my kids was at the grocery store. My youngest daughter, she was actually it was my middle daughter, Alyssa, when she was at the grocery store. Katie was pushing around the cart when she was a little baby, was barely talking, and she pointed at Dr. Pepper and went, "Dada juice," And so when one of her few words is pointed at Dr. Pepper and knowing that's Dada juice,
oh my gosh,
then you've got problems. And so I've toned down my Dr. Pepper, but I still love Dr. Pepper, and it's if you're gonna have one vice, I guess drinking soda
not a bad thing.
Isn't
it's
a
not a bad
one.
thing, because the connection, I think, is because I love Dr. Pepper. So I remember, I think we did have the conversation.
We did have that, yeah.
You
and it's
mentioned
great.
that,
I mean, there's no better soda. It's the best soda out there.
I agree.
By far. I love it.
I agree.
I need to make my pilgrimage to Waco so I can visit the birthplace of Dr. Pepper and go to the Dr. Pepper Museum one of these days.
I'm going to get you
I'll
a T-shirt.
Yeah.
All right. Secondly, fantasy baseball, because this is another thing that blew me away. Is I've been playing fantasy baseball for 20, 25 years, usually with the family, maybe get into a paid league. I am one that goes start to finish. Okay, so I am not that person that bows out. That's pet peeve for me. But your fantasy, and I don't know, is it just baseball? Because it's intense.
Yeah, it's intense. It's probably a little too intense and a little too time consuming. Like it was when I was younger, maybe it was a little more fun, but now it's almost burdensome. Like, I feel like I'm managing an actual, real life baseball team, even though I know it's nothing like that. But I mean, this goes back to being a huge sports fan. Steve and I, we've talked a lot of sports over the years. I'm a huge, huge sports fan, loving our Sacramento Kings right now, that they're doing so well. I grew up with just a huge Kings fan. And I was a big baseball fan growing up. Yeah. That's something that was passed on through my father, which is how baseball is passed on. I collected baseball cards and was just a huge, huge stat nerd with baseball in particular, but all sports, but baseball in particular. I started doing fantasy baseball online when I was in 8th grade.
Okay.
In 1990, 91, when online was still kind of a weird platform. I went through this thing called Prodigy, if you even remember that.
Yes.
That's how I got online. This is before America Online. Like this was
America
and I did this thing called Baseball Manager. I was in 8th grade. I was doing it with like probably 40 and 50-year-olds, like the rotisserie nerds and stuff.
Yes.
And then here I was in 8th grade doing Baseball Manager. So I've been doing fantasy baseball, my whole life, really into it. But then I found my way into this league through my brother-in-law, actually. And we are in a really intense fantasy baseball league that has contracts, minor leagues. We draft players out of high school, and we have a minor league roster, a professional roster. We sign guys to contracts. We don't even really have a draft because everybody's on contract for the most part, and we sign them for multi-year deals, and it's a really complicated thing. We have a constitution that's like 60 or 70 pages. Our league has been featured in national fantasy sport things. In fact, one guy in our league even got to throw out the first pitch at the Seattle Mariners baseball game because the work that he does, through running our fantasy league, but also a lot of his stats that he tracks and creates his own statistical measures, was one of the reasons that Edgar Martinez got in the Hall of Fame, was his stat work that he did. And so the Seattle Mariners honored him and allowed him to throw out the first pitch at the Seattle Mariners game. So he's kind of our league commissioner. So when you have that guy at the tip of the sword, the rest of the league is going to be pretty intense. So it's a ton of fun. I love doing it. But,
that's cool.
But it's a lot of work, and so I kind of put the other fantasy sports a little bit more on. I do more traditional, just kind of easy fantasy football, but I'm all in on fantasy baseball, and it's been a great way to follow the sport. I'm signing these guys coming out of high school and tracking them all the way through. So by the time a guy is popular in the major leagues, I've already known about this guy for 7 or 8 years because he's been on a minor league roster of somebody in our league. So. Yeah. Okay,
so next obvious question, can you name maybe one player that you've had on your team that you knew of that?
Yes. I drafted Joey Votto. This is how long it's been. I drafted him out of high school.
Wow.
So Joey Votto now is, I think, 38 years old.
Yes.
He's had a prolific career, probably going into the Hall of Fame. And I've had him on my roster since he was 18 years old and graduated high school and was a prospect. I drafted him as a prospect, put him on my minor league roster. He went through my minor leagues into the pros. I signed him for a lot of multiple contracts, and he's been with me all the way. So Joey Votto, I was one of the first guys that knew about him in fantasy baseball years before anybody else. So that's actually kind of a fun one. So, and there's probably someone sitting on my minor league team right now that maybe 15, 20 years from now is going to be that next Joey Votto career.
That's the beauty of fantasy baseball.
Yeah.
I love that it goes so deep like that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So speaking of family, I know a couple years ago, there was a moment you had posted a photo when the Dodgers won the championship. And I reached out to you and I said, you know what? Super cool moment because I've been going that through my boys. We're A's fans.
I know.
So like
you're going to get
yeah,
it.
like you, we had kind of the same tenure on waiting on that next championship. It finally happened for the Dodgers, and I could just tell, like, through your post in the picture, like that's the moment I'm waiting for.
Yeah, it was great because my father grew up a Dodger fan. Jackie Robinson was his hero, and he went through the championships with Maury Wills and Sandy Koufax and Walt Alston, and then there was that period of time where then I grew up and he passed on that Dodger fandom to me, and then I got to experience that championship in 1988. Kirk Gibson, Tommy Lasorda, Orel Hershiser. And I was 10, 11 years old when that happened, and then I passed on that fandom to my son and daughter. My daughters, in fact, Everly, my youngest daughter, is a huge baseball fan, and she's a Dodger fan too. And so then in 2020, which I know many people in Northern California don't think is a real championship. But
championship is a championship.
I understand, but just that moment of then having that opportunity to celebrate that with my kids and Bellinger and Turner and Kershaw and of course Dave Roberts just that lineage of being Dodger fans and having all those touch points, it was cool. And it was fun to call my dad that night after they won the championship, and it was right around his birthday, and he was at home and I was watching the game with my kids, and here's that lineage of Dodger fans. And that's there are very few things in this world that bring families and people together like sports. It's weird that sports does that, but it does, and it was a super cool moment for me. And I have to take a lot of hatred around these parts for being a Dodger fan. So that moment was worth it for us. And it's been a great run of baseball, even though we haven't won a ton of championships. The last 9 or 10 years have been, probably one of the best stretches of baseball for any team in the history of baseball. The last 10 years for the Dodger fans. And it's been tough that we haven't been able to, hoist more trophies. But, winning championships in baseball is, kind of a stroke of luck sometimes. But I just love that they've been putting out great teams and done it with homegrown core talent, and it's been fun. And it does hopefully provide hope for the A's fans out there, because I do think the A's fans build teams, or the A's build teams the right way. I know that there's a cap on how good they can be until they can start spending money.
Our window right now is closed.
I know it's closed, but they for so many years have kind of built teams the right way. And of course there's the revenue piece where you gotta spend money to keep that talent and stuff. But it's going to be a special day, I know, for you and your boys when they do win that championship. I got to experience it, so I know you're going to get to, and it's going to be a fun day.
I look forward to it.
Hope it happens in Oakland, Steve.
Yes, I know. Raiders, okay, Kings. Hey, Kings are looking good. So I'm just riding the wave.
How
right
awesome will that be, though?
That will be,
and it will happen one day when we get that moment. We almost got it in 2002. We actually did get it in 2002.
We
but
did.
Whatever. When we get it, it's going to be such a cool. This place is going to come unglued, and it's going to be so fun. I'm
the magic's back. I feel like the magic's back.
We're lighting the beam,
Light the beam.
Right.
Which, by the way, I have Martina Colocatronis on this program. I heard it was her idea. Great idea.
Everybody's claiming that it was their idea.
Yeah, I got to find out. I got to get down to the lowdown of that.
It's probably Conti's idea.
It probably was Conti's idea.
But I
would
love it.
not
It's cool.
doubt that
That's awesome.
one bit.
Yeah.
So I finished with this question. Whose wedding was better? Yours or Zach's? Because here's the deal, folks. I had the honor of being the DJ for Scott and Katie Abbott's wedding, and it was one of my very first weddings. And then a few years ago, brother Zach got married, and we turned it up.
Yeah.
But both were special. But I had to throw out that nugget of information.
I mean, I've got to say mine was better, of course. I mean, just because it was my wedding, but also because I can't let my brother have anything on me.
No.
But I will say, like, that's a really cool. It's been cool for me to see your journey because, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, we became friends through teaching and other things, and then when you made that decision, similar to mine, to leave coaching, you to leave broadcasting was a very similar type decision. And you kind of took that leap off the edge to, start a DJ business and do that. And, my wedding being one of your first is it's crazy.
And it meant a lot, Scott, it meant a lot because you really did take a chance on me because I think I had done one before. You were my second, but I knew it was going to be easier just because of our connection. Mm-hmm. That's what I felt, but man, I was so appreciative of that.
But you probably have done, you probably know the number. I mean, think about all the weddings you've done since then, and now you're doing, probably in the summer, you're probably doing, your head spinning with all the weddings you're doing, and to think that in that, now it's been almost 20 years, that all those, that we were one of your first weddings. And what's crazy for me now going to weddings, and I'm sure you can speak to this, is like the wedding, like production has changed like drastically, like there's probably so much more asked of you and for the better. I mean, these weddings are just so cool and awesome now. Like for us, it was like, hey, just play some cool music and,
Which
and I
we
think
did.
even knowing your background in sports broadcasting, I teed up, I said, hey, let's do some cool intros when we bring the wedding party out. I'll write some like sports intros for you and you can kind of do it. But now the production around these weddings is like through the roof and probably puts a lot of pressure on you as a DJ. But it's just fun for me to see how far you've come in your journey and the success you've had. And, and we just kind of were making it up as we went along back then. It was like, hey, just play some music and, announce this stuff and let's have a great time. And so, and it was a memorable wedding. Obviously, everybody's wedding's memorable, but you're a big part of that. And you play a big role in everybody's special day, and you're kind of imprinted in everybody's, special moment. And so it is such an important job, and you do a really good job. And it was a special day in our lives, and we were happy to have you a part of it. Not just because you're a great DJ, but because you're a great person in our lives too.
Yeah, it's great. I was thinking about coming into this conversation about how connected we are. It just goes back so many years. Like I was thinking of all the guests. I was saying I probably have more connection with you, Scott, than anybody else I've interviewed on this program. So it's timely because it's the CIM that's coming up, but I'm glad we kind of were able to get into the other things, about you personally and how you got to where you are and the success that you have brought to the city with the Sacramento Running Association, everything that you've done. So I applaud you for everything. I'm looking forward to what is going to be a great, great weekend. And of course, we'll put all the information about CIM, SRA, and make sure that everybody can get in contact with you if they need to.
Awesome. Well, thanks for giving us this platform to talk about it. And I appreciate it. I appreciate all you do for our community. And I'm glad to be a part of the Buzz.
There he goes. There he is. Scott Abbott, Executive Director of the California International Marathon, coming up this Sunday. He's also the Sacramento Running Association Executive Director. Good stuff. Thank you for tuning in. Great conversation. And we'll be back with a final word. All right, well, there you have it. That is our conversation with Scott Abbott. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And now, whether you are running this weekend or you're not running, I just hope that was great knowledge for you. I do encourage you, if you are listening to this program, get out to the CIM Expo. It runs Friday and Saturday. I believe Friday it goes from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Saturday it goes from 9 to 5. I will actually be out there. I'm playing the music within the Sacramento Convention Center, making announcements and helping out with the panel. And the panels are amazing because kind of what you heard today, you'll hear within those panels as people talk about the CIM and how to prepare for it. And believe me, if you are running in it, it is great knowledge. Of course, there's amazing vendors there so you can get yourself outfitted. So the expo is part of the experience. And then Sunday, I will be at the start line and the finish line. It's pretty cool. It's my second year doing both. And the start line to me is just one of those priceless moments in Sacramento that you're like, wow, it's so cool that I get to be a part of this. Seeing all those runners come through as I'm just cheering them on and getting them out on the, the race path for their 26.2. So good stuff there. And then of course, down at the finish line, Kevin Selby will be announcing the elite runners coming in. Remember, the women's record was broken just last year. Pretty good stuff there. Who knows what will happen this year with the conditions? We will see. But Kevin Selby will be announcing all the elite runners, and then I will take over, and then I will be there till 1:30 in the afternoon announcing all the names that come across the finish line. It's a pretty cool moment. So I'm glad you could join us to talk about the CIM today. Of course, we'll have another amazing guest coming your way next week. That's all I got for now. Talk to you next time. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you for joining Steve this week on Experience the Buzz. Steve would love to hear from you. Leave a review or contact Steve directly with any questions at scbuzzard@gmail.com. To see the other adventures of Steve Buzzard, be sure to visit buzzardball.com.